Donna-Leigh Perfect here, reading with Rocky Rockstar. Hey Rocky, say hi. Wow. Rocky's ready for a story, are you? Are you ready for a story? Today we're going to read The Three-Legged Cat, written by Margret, Mahy. You ready? Shall we get started? Okay, let's go. There once was an old tabby called Tom, who longed to prowl around the world. He longed to see hills and valleys and wild, mysterious woods as well. He longed to see the sea. But Tom was a three-legged cat. Prowling was difficult with only 3 legs. What he was good at was curling up neatly, wrapping his tabby tail around himself and going to sleep. It's a little bit like you, Rocky. As he slept through, he dreamed of the wide world and his 3 paws twitched. Tom lived with short-sighted Mrs. Gimble of number 7 Cardamom Street. She was a most respectable widow. She liked cats, but she liked them best when they curled up and slept. It bothered her to see Tom come running all dot and go, carry on whenever she opened the fridge. "You'll eat me out of house and home," she said. She wanted a cat who would stay put and eat nothing. She certainly didn't want a prowler. "One prowler in the family is quite enough," said Mrs. Gimble, for she had a rascally roving swagman brother called Cyril. All year he prowled uphill and down and around and in and out of the edges of the world, wearing his revolting, molting Russian hat to keep his bald head warm. Once a year, he would look in at number 7 Cardamom Street for a cup of tea and a bit of a chin wag. Oh dear, Mrs. Gimble knew the neighbours would be watching as that revolting, molting Russian hat came up the street, turned in at her gate. "Yes," she grumbled to Tom. "One prowler is more than enough." Tom wrapped himself around his own tabby tail. He dreamed of prowling beside the sea. In his dreams, the sea was pink and fizzy. He dreamed of forests and fields of sheep. In his dream, the forests were no higher than hedges, and the sheep ran about like woolly hedgehogs. "Thank goodness Tom isn't one of those prowling cats," thought Mrs. Gimble. "I'm glad he only has 3 legs." Then she heard a familiar step on the path. Horribikichoo! A revolting, molting Russian hat was coming up the path to her door. It was Cyril, the swagman. What would the neighbours think? Knock, 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 went the door. "Hello, Daisy. How about a cup of tea and a bit of a chin wag?" cried Cyril. That is a pretty revolting, molting Russian hat, I must say. "Oh, Cyril, Cyril, it's lovely to see you, but why don't you curl up and settle down?" Mrs. Gimble said, as she poured a cup of tea for her brother. She wept into the teapot.
Don't cry into my tea, Daisy. I take sugar, not salt, said Cyril. But perhaps you're right. I love prowling the world, but my hat has molted badly. Somehow it doesn't keep my head as warm as it used to. It's not much fun prowling about with a bald head when it's cold. Perhaps I should settle down. Once more around the world, and then I think I'll think about it.
Mrs. Gimble was looking anxiously out of the window. Her neighbours didn't prowl, but they did pry.
Suppose they see there's a swagman sitting in here having a cup of tea and a bit of a chinwag,
she thought. Hastily, she drew the curtains. As Cyril poured tea into a saucer so that it would cool quickly, Mrs. Gimble told him all about a new furniture polish she had discovered in a sale, and Cyril told her how to prowl successfully during earthquakes. But Mrs. Gimble hated the idea of earthquakes, and Cyril, who had no furniture, was not in the least bit interested in furniture polish.
Well, time to be on my way,
Cyril said. At last, he picked up his hat. But it wasn't his hat. He put on his hat, but it wasn't his hat. Out into the street he strolled, wearing Tom, the three-legged cat, curled around his bald head, sound asleep.
Goodbye, old girl,
he called out to Mrs. Gimble.
I'll be back this time next year for a cup of tea and a bit of a chinwag.
And off went Cyril, the swagman, with him went Tom, the three-legged cat.
My hat is deliciously warm,
Cyril thought, as he marched down the road.
My bald head feels so cosy. I could prowl all round the world wearing a hat as warm as this.
Look at that, Rocky. He's wearing the three-legged cat on his head. That's funny. Tom, the cat, woke to find he was wrapped snugly around a bald head and riding down the road. There, right in front of him, was the beginning of the country. He saw hedges, he saw hogs, he even saw hedgehogs and fields full of sheep. The world stretched all the way to the edge of the sky.
I'm seeing the wide world at last,
Tom thought in amazement. He wrapped his tabby tail more firmly around Cyril's ears.
The wide world is so much wider than I thought it was.
This hat is so much warmer than I thought it was,
muttered Cyril the swagman, walking up and over the hill. Then Tom the cat saw the sea for the first time. It was not pink, it was green. It was not fizzy. It rolled backwards and forwards all the way around the world.
The sea,
thought Tom the cat.
I am seeing the sea.
He began to purr.
My hat is purring, thought Cyril the swagman. It's never purred before.
It's funny, isn't it? A tabby tail twitched in front of his eyes.
Horribacunch! I've carried off Daisy's three-legged cat, cried Cyril the swagman. It's just as well I have enough sausages for the two of us.
Meanwhile, back at number 7 Cardamom Street, Mrs. Gimble was sitting by the fire, stroking the hat. It sat very still, and when she opened the fridge, the hat didn't stir. It just sat there molting slightly.
My cat is suddenly cheap to feed,
thought Mrs. Gimble. The hat did not show the least bit of interest even when she ate her own fish dinner. And out in the wide world, Cyril and Tom were sharing the sausages.
I won't settle down after all,
Said Cyril the swagman, stroking Tom.
You can curl around my head, keep me cosy any time while I do the prowling for the both of us. I've never had a better hat than a furry, friendly, three-legged cat.
And I've never had a better cat.
Said Mrs. Gimble, stroking the Russian hat tenderly.
It's true that it moults, but we all have our faults, and it's cheap to keep and always asleep.
The wide world beckoned. Tom purred. The hat just sat on Mrs. Gimble's lap, and everyone lived happily ever after. That's a funny story, Rocky, isn't it? Hey? Isn't that a funny story? The three-legged cat